And I should probably start by saying that storytelling is my absolute favorite subgenre of songwriting. It's not even close. Songs like Aesop Rock's Ruby 81 or Snail Zero, Lupe with The Cool or Let Me Put You on Game, Kendrick's Gloria, Slick Rick's Lottie Dottie, of course, it's the first music I ever bought with my own money, Children's Story, and of course, Nas Rewind. But storytelling songs also have a big problem, and I've been thinking about this a lot. Their replay value isn't all that great. When you know the end of the story, there has to be some other aspect to pull you in. Take Gloria, for example. It has a bunch of things that I missed the first time before I knew that Gloria was his pen. Things like, remember when you caught that body and still wiggled through that sentence? Or, I know your favorite movie, is it Notebook? Come on. But even that replay value fades pretty quickly. Without SZA on the chorus, fades even faster. Something like Lupe's Let Me Put You on Game keeps us all debating the meaning of it. Something like Snail Zero's just so charming and absolutely ridiculous and unlike anything else. And then, of course, there are mega classics like Jay-Z's 99 Problems and Slick Rick's Children's Story. So story songs can do it. It's just not easy. And Cole was doing something extra daunting with Disc 2, Track 2. He's going up against a classic, a legend. He's inviting us to make comparisons to one of the best concept songs ever written. And as we know, there's a history with Cole and Nas. He had I Let Nas Down. He wants to make his own Illmatic. He wanted his first album to be Illmatic. That couldn't happen. He wants his final album to be Illmatic. And he holds Nas up on this pedestal, a well-deserved pedestal. And then there's the fact that Kendrick recently paid homage to One Mic, the song right after Rewind on Stillmatic. That relationship, Cole and Kendrick, is obviously fraught. So drawing attention to that relationship via these kinds of comparisons is playing a dangerous game. And he had to know we would draw these comparisons. But if you want people to take notice, it's a pretty good way to catch attention. And he does do some really interesting things in this song that I think a lot of people are overlooking. And since he's basically invited us to do it, let's compare and contrast Nas's Rewind and J. Cole's new Disc 2, Track 2. Now, the first big difference I see is pretty obvious. On Rewind, Nas is extremely explicit in his narrative. There's not much room for interpretation. He's painting a picture the way that he often does, but the imagery of every scene is in reverse. It's a play-by-play of a short story unfolding or folding back up, as the case may be. For instance, the song starts with "The bullet goes back in the gun." And I like that he doesn't spell out the actual ending for us. He doesn't tell us what happens to that bullet. We assume the guy got hit, but we don't know for sure. I mean, this story is one big cause and effect, but in reverse. We see the effect, somebody firing a gun, and then work backward to the cause. But it's very explicit. He tells us frame by frame what's happening in the narrative. Cole's is a little different. He's telling a much longer story, traversing his entire life, which, if I did my math correctly, says he'll live to be 100, which is an interesting coincidence because there's a book called The Big 100, which is about how now that people are aging up to 100 years old more often, how retirement is going to look different. And the author of that book is William J. Cole. Gotta be coincidence. It has to be coincidence. I can't imagine that was on purpose. But anyway, because this is a 100-year story in a couple of minutes, he's giving us these very short vignettes of meaningful or symbolic moments along the way. And that has some pros and cons. On one hand, we don't get the linear, vivid imagery that Nas gives us. It's harder to put ourselves in that situation. But on the other hand, we get to do a little more work, which is something I wish songs did more often. I wish they offered for us to do the work more often. And when Cole says, my grandkids carried the coffin to the altar as they burst into tears from their shirts. The tears rise to the sides of their face and into their eyes, piercing with hurt. That's just as vivid as what Nas gives us, but not as straightforward and obvious. It's not spelled out the same way. We have to spend a little more time really listening and thinking about what's happening in this scene. But when Nas says something like, Jungle unrolls it, put his weed back in the jar, the blunt turns back into a cigar, that's just more common language. We understand that faster than we understand something like burst into tears from their shirts. That's not a sentence you've ever heard before. So it takes a little more thinking to get it. I'm not saying one is better than the other, just that they're different, that Cole isn't doing exactly the same thing as Nas. And in Rewind, Nas is using a lot of reverse dialogue to really good effect. It's one of my favorite parts of the song. And he tells us to pay particular attention to it, saying, listen up so you could figure out the poem real clear. The voice on the phone was like, outside right we. So with my mouth wide, holding my heat, bullets I had plenty to squeeze, plenty for ya. Cause Jungle said block your on, enemies the. How many of you had to pause and think about that when you first heard it? I know that I did. I probably rewound that 6 times trying to understand what he was saying. We right outside, the enemy's on your block. Cole uses dialogue 1 time. And at first I wished there was more, but the one time he uses it has a real punch. He says, with each day that passes, I could feel my career coming first. Do I? Took the wedding ring off her finger, now I'm single, walking up the aisle backwards to an era of dirt. In the forward version of this story, he gets married, I do, and then each day forward, his career is moving further to the back. Family is moving into the front. But now, I do becomes do I, a provocative question. Is that single life with my career as my main priority the life I actually want? It's a great way to put your current life into perspective. That's not really what I want. And he then gives us a clue about what I think is really his superpower. We leave the club, drive to the show, and I swear that it's turned. It all begins with encore cheers from those wearing my merch. And look, I'm not the biggest J.Cole fan. Middle Child went platinum in my car, but that's really it. That's really the only Cole song that I ever really connected with. But I did buy his podcast, Inevitable, and I loved it. His willingness to connect with his fans, that's his superpower. His music may not connect with me, but it obviously does to a lot of people. His story, however, did connect with me in a strong way. That's why I'm paying attention now. I watched Culture United last night, which was maybe the best Culture United ever. And some people were saying that they found J. Cole boring. I don't know if I'd go that far, but for me, his everyday person persona is part of what just doesn't catch me. And I think it's what they find boring. But again, a lot of people see it in a very different way. And as he nears the end of the song, or the beginning, depending on how you're looking at this thing, he gets to a couple of my favorite lines. And they both fall into this more poetic and less straightforward type of writing. And the first is, decade later, mama cut on the cable. My motivation to be greater ends the moment I peer in her purse. I've seen a lot of speculation about this line on the internet. What I take from it is that going forward, he's saying that whatever he saw in her purse is what motivated him. It's what motivated him to do the work he's doing. That might be a lack of money. That might be the bills she hasn't paid. It could be a lot of things. He doesn't tell us what it is. We get to think about it. And then finally, he addresses a real truth in Black communities, particularly of his generation, that fathers weren't always around. The government systematically found ways to pull Black men out of the home, to tear families apart. And he says, I'm growing shorter, Pampers cover my hindquarters. I watch my father walk back in my life and it clears up a hurt I couldn't explain. Clears up a hurt I couldn't explain. If we're going forward, there's a hurt for the rest of his life that he can't explain. The rest of those 90 whatever years, it's a hurt he can't explain. And that's real. I haven't seen my own father since I was 10 years old, and I swore I'd never be like him, but I wouldn't have come up with as poetic a way to say that there was a pain there that I couldn't explain. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying Cole's song just isn't as good as Nas's song. And personally, I do like Rewind better. I like the rapping in Rewind better. But that said, I do think that Cole's writing, in my opinion, is better. He took what Nas did it masterfully, by the way, and improved on it. It's what he's supposed to do. It's what the next generation is supposed to take from their teachers, from the people who wrote the blueprints, no pun intended. They're supposed to carry that forward and make it better. And I do think that Cole's writing was better here. But do have issues with it. I have issues with both songs, actually, but I have more issues with Cole's song. Let's start back at the start, which is actually the end of the story. My biggest gripe with both of these songs is that they both tell us the gimmick, that it's going to be in reverse. Right up front, they tell us that. And for me, that's a misstep. Part of what was great about Gloria is that we didn't know until the end what the punchline was. And then we immediately started it over because we had to know what we missed, like when you saw Sixth Sense for the first time. Now imagine if they hadn't told us. We'd be halfway through the song, coming to the realization that it's going to be a whole story in reverse. And halfway through is only about a minute, so I'm not saying we're dumb here. They're just short songs. But we'd get hyped, and we'd start it over, listening way closer. And both songs do give us reasons to rewind, but just like I don't want a movie to spell out its plot points, I don't want a song to tell me what it's trying to do. I want an artist to respect me as a listener enough to know that I'll figure it out. And if I don't, then that song wasn't for me. Also, if Cole had kept the appeared in a hearse, steered to the church, tears from their shirts rhyme scheme going without ever saying the word reverse, that would have been dope. But they both tell us up front. And now, when disc 2, track 2 begins, we hear Cole saying, "How I see it," like he's just finished telling a story from his own perspective. That's how I see it. I think that's clever. But then he does it again at the end, which is actually the beginning, before he says, "I'ma come in." And I wish he'd have just finished the song with "I'ma come in," like he's starting the song. But the "how I see it" there that echoes back to the start of the song took me out of it. It took away that linear feel. Nas ends with the voicemail saying they saw the guy on the block, and then his own voicemail greeting, "Yo, this is Nas, leave it, peace." That's a perfect ending. How the story would have started. But then there's the big elephant in the room, the fact that Cole ducked out of the beef. Not only ducked out, but rescinded his diss, recorded it, took the time to write it, record it, and then took it back. To be honest, I'm not mad at him for that, but a lot of people have raised the issue that he just can't claim to be the best MC anymore. As far as I'm concerned, he can claim to be the best. He can still believe himself to be the best at some segment of MCing if he wants to. But when he says things like, "Fast forward 60 years, I got verse of the year, my purpose is clear, it's to murk. Whoever dare flirt with death, the best alive, and what you now hear is the work. That's questionable. He may have verse of the year. We may hear that work. I hope we do. But if his purpose is to murk whoever dare flirt with death, then, well, he had his chance and he missed the mark. Those lines could have been left out. And for me, personally, the song would be better. Or they come later in the song or earlier in his life. But not right now, not present day. And that's when he says them. I went through it several times trying to make it fit to before the beef, and it just doesn't. And I have to wonder if the commitment to the rhyme scheme didn't lead him there. His thirst to adhere to this rhyme scheme. And look, I've heard do you know how hard this is? Yes, I do know how hard this is. But technical difficulties don't make great songs. They can be a bonus, but there are lots of rappers who stick to rhyme schemes for entire songs at the expense of the song itself. Like I said, he could have moved that. He could have come up with something else. And then there's the Disc 2, Track 2 title. I hope it's not literal. I have serious doubts about him meeting his goal of making his Illmatic with a double disc, unless it's 2 5-track discs. And I'd love to be proven wrong. There's also the possibility, though, that what comes next is the mixtape It's a Boy that was teased in an old post. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, with him setting it up this way, having just reversed his birth and he's no longer on Earth, it would make sense if he wanted to start back forward again that It's a Boy. But then that should be disc 1, I think. I'm not sure. Like I said, I hope the title's not literal. But we'll soon find out. And I'm looking forward to it. All right. See you next time.